Now, John Clarke and Clarke Dawe on the sudden interest in rates.
Glenn Stevens, thank you for your time.
Well, waves of unalloyed pleasure course freely about my person, Brian, as well you know, at the very prospect of further discourse with you.
I am similarly gripped.
This augurs well, Brian.
It does. You've been criticised this week by Mr Paul Howes.
Yes, Brian, I make no secret of the fact that I live a life crowded with incident. I wouldn't swap it with anyone.
Mr Howes says that the Reserve Bank has the wrong interest rate policy and fears for jobs in industry.
Does he? Does he say why?
Well, he says the cost of Australian goods are too high.
Is the term cost of labour used at any point in his no doubt penetrating analysis of what the adults are thinking about in the other room?
He says he wonders if there will be a steel industry in the future, and if we don't have a steel industry, what happens to manufacturing?
Yeah, a bit rhetorical. We'll all be murdered in our beds. What he's talking about here, essentially, of course, is the exchange rate.
It's historically high.
It is very historically high, Brian, for one simple reason. The Australian economy is going very well. The Australian economy came through the GFC in very, very good order as a result, Brian, of the policies of the Australian government and the RBA.
True dat.
That is why the Australian exchange rate is high.
That's right.
It is therefore not a good argument to say as follows. The policies of the RBA have been successful. Therefore, the policies of the RBA have not been successful.
I don't believe that's Mr Howes' argument.
It's nevertheless a very good point I'm making.
It's an excellent
point. And it's rather a beautiful point.
It is a
in my
superb
view.
point.
Thank you very much, Brian.
You're welcome. Mr Howes' argument is that by failing to lower interest rates, you're sending jobs overseas.
Well, that's not an argument. That's finger painting. Mr Howes might know what he's talking about in other areas, but he makes quite a common error here in assuming that if you lower interest rates, Brian, you reduce upward pressure on the exchange rate. What very often happens if you lower interest rates is that people spend more, and ultimately you've got to put interest rates up.
So can you make any argument work as a justification what you've already done?
What a very flattering and kind person you are. That's a lovely thought, Brian. But actually my job is to use the levers and controls at our disposal to best benefit the Australian economy.
Yes, by what criteria?
Well, by the criteria we're given.
That is why Mr Howes is saying the RBA charter needs to be reviewed.
Well, that'd be a matter for government.
So he should talk to the government?
Yeah, I mean, someone would need to make an appointment, obviously.
Mr Howes making an appointment?
No. The government, Brian, would need to make an appointment with Mr Howes. He's a pretty important bloke. I mean, you're not going to get in easily. I don't know how they'd get in.
Not this year.
No, not this year. He's a very, very important man. They might be able to see his assistant.
Yeah, in a couple of years.
Yes, whoever he might be.
Thanks for your time.
He'd need one, though. He's a very busy bloke. Thank you, Brian. I'm disappointed we've had to come to such an early conclusion.
It was most eliminating.
Seemed to be going so well.
Monetary policy, it's funnier than you think.